We're fortunate today to have two graduate deans to share how they work with Mcnair programs as part of their institution's recruitment efforts, followed by a Mcnair director describing his own interaction with graduate schools as he helps position his students for competitive applications to grad school. We'll hear first from Renita Miller, Associate Dean for Access, Diversity, and Inclusion at the Princeton University Graduate School, followed by Selena Chapman Nelson, Associate Dean for Academic Diversity and Inclusion at Columbia University College of Arts and Sciences. And next, Stephen Fernandez, Director of the Ronald D. Mcnair Post-Baccalaureate Achievement Program at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. We really want this to be an interactive session, so we do encourage your questions after the speakers are finished. Please place them in the chat. And as you know, the session is being recorded, so we'll make sure to distribute the recordings to all participants afterwards. So now I'll turn the floor over to Dean Miller.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you so much for this invitation to come and speak to you all today. It is my absolute pleasure and always excited to share with you all various aspects of the work that we do in access, diversity, and inclusion at the graduate school level and how we engage. So I thought I would sort of start this presentation off. It's very, it's a quick sort of PowerPoint because I want to make sure that there's time left over for my esteemed colleagues. But I just thought I would start with the takeaways. So if you take nothing away from what I have to say today, it's just a few things that I have noted here in these slides, which is that from our perspective as selective colleges, I know I can speak on behalf of Selena and Stephen and all of our colleges at selective universities, is that Mcnair programs are held in very high regard at our institutions and are doing an amazing job preparing undergraduates for graduate education. From where I sit and I participate, I'm actually in the middle of graduate admissions right now. I sit with all 42 of our departments and advocate on behalf of graduate students from underrepresented backgrounds to be admitted to Princeton. And the program that I would say that we see the most students from is Mcnair. Currently, we're not even finished with our admissions process, and we have an amazing group of Mcnair scholars that have already been admitted to Princeton. And so with that, I want to say that I encourage you to reach out to the Associate Dean of Diversity and Inclusion at these selective institutions. Many of my peers, I know for certain, all of the Ivy League schools and Ivy Plus schools, as we call them, Stanford, UChicago, other selective institutions, that they have a person that is in my role. They may have different responsibilities. However, they are eager to connect with program directors and faculty and anyone at your institution that works with students that are interested in graduate education, or for that matter, maybe they don't know if they're interested or not, but you are helping prepare them for graduate education. So I would say, just look on the graduate school website and find that, and click on diversity. There's always a link to diversity, and it'll tell you who those people are. And ask them directly about opportunities to join. Tell them about opportunities that you may have at your institution to join a program meeting. Maybe you are holding periodic meetings for your scholars. They tend to want to engage with your students. They want to engage with you. They want to build a relationship. And so let them know where those opportunities exist. And now that we are virtual, there's so many more opportunities for those types of collaborations and communications. Most of our institutions have fee waiver programs specifically for Mcnair scholars or for students from underrepresented backgrounds. Ask them, is there a fee waiver program? Or, we sometimes have specific codes for Mcnair scholars, or it's outlined on our graduate applications. They get to select the fee waiver, and those are automatic. They have to sometimes provide a letter, as you all probably already know, that, you know, just suggest that that student is a part of your program. And then oftentimes we are giving presentations on various aspects of the graduate admissions process. And so you can simply ask that representative, that diversity practitioner at that institution, if there are topics that they have, that they present on, and maybe those topics may be of interest to you or to your scholars, but also they sometimes may even be willing to curate programs for your specific needs. I do this all the time. If a program says, you know, our students really want to know more about letters of recommendation, I can easily put together a program to talk about letters of recommendation and what faculty are looking for and what programs are looking for. Or I can enlist the people at my institution that may have an expertise in that particular area to sort of pull together a program. And again, because we are now virtual, we can easily connect with institutions. So I'm saying all of that, and now I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Princeton and how, if you wanted to connect with me and say, you know, I want to learn more about this program, I would say the things that I'm going to talk about that are unique to Princeton, they are not necessarily unique. The things I'm going to talk about may be unique to Princeton, but not necessarily that is the case. Other institutions have programs that support students from underrepresented backgrounds. And when I say underrepresented backgrounds, that's diversity in various components and contains various identities. And so the diversity practitioners really are eager to support you in whichever ways that they can. So, so just to talk a little bit about Princeton and our programs here. So just a little statistics here on our demographic program. This past year was another record-breaking year for our incoming class as it relates to diversity. 39% of our students were international students representing over 50 different countries. 46% were US minorities. 24% of the entering domestic student population were underrepresented minorities, and that's up from 13% in 2014. So our commitment to diversity has been really, really an important factor of the work that we do, and we're really proud of the gains that we've seen over the course of the past 10 years. And then 30% of the entering domestic student population were first generation and or low income students. And also many of our institutions are committed to allowing students from all backgrounds to have access to a Princeton education. That's up from 17% in just 2017. Okay, so who are we? So this is my team. Other institutions have their teams. I have 2 assistant deans that work on my team that support the different divisions, and I have 2 coordinators and also an assistant director of diversity initiatives that support the work that we do. We do holistic student support, we do professional development, we do community building. We, as I mentioned, work in the admissions process. We do outreach and recruitment, and we tell you all about it in our Kaleidoscope newsletter, which you can access on our website. These are just a few of the pictures from the fall when the world was open once upon a time. We are opening back up again, but this just gives you a few. We have barbecues and picnics and all kinds. Yesterday we actually had a skate party with the 2000s theme. So just on one note, my husband said, you're not a spring chicken, as I wake up like with all kinds of aches and pains. But it's always fun to support our students and to hang out with them and to get to know them and understand what some of their challenges and joys and all of those things are. So in terms of financial support for Princeton, all of our PhD students receive full financial support for the length of their course of study. funded through fellowship, teaching, and advisor support. So they do not have to have external fellowships. Many of our students do come in with external fellowships, but that is not necessarily the case. That is not the case for all institutions. And I will say our graduate students are very happy right now because they just received a 25% raise on their stipends. And so that, you know, for those of us that have been to graduate school, know that what we received is very different from what students are receiving now to attend graduate school. Good for them, I say. Housing, Princeton is located between Philly and New York. So we're in a really great location. So I won't talk more about that. I will just tell you, we have a couple of initiatives that I think are really important, which is our Graduate Scholars Program, which is a first-year cohort experience that allows us to get to know our students, but provide them the support that they need, mentoring. They have social events. They get all of these seminars and skill development and professional development that allows them to get to know people across the disciplines. And these are a few pictures from our retreat that we have over the course of the summer. Where they just get an opportunity to connect. And so they start the year off with this built-in community that they sustain over the course of the year. We have affinity groups. We have Black Graduate Caucus, Intersecting Queer Identities, Latino Graduate Student Association, Women in STEM, all of these wonderful opportunities for students to engage. And then I'll just tell you briefly about our Pre-Doctoral Fellowship program. This is a one-of-its-kind program that includes, before they start their graduate program, some students need a little more time. It's not a postbac in that they have to apply for graduate school after they've completed it. They apply to graduate school when they apply to graduate school, they get to say, I want to be considered for the pre-doctoral fellowship. So you think of a postdoc, which usually happens after they finish with their graduate career. This is a pre-doc. It happens before they start. And this is our commitment to say, we want to ensure that these students are successful. We curate a program that is individualized for that student, whether they need additional language training, whether they need additional quantitative skills, whatever it is that they need to work on for that year. So once they start that first year, they hit the ground running. And it's an amazing program, and they get the same stipend. They get all of the same benefits. They get housing, everything that a first year graduate student receives, they receive it as part of the pre-doc. And we have 23 participating departments in that program. All of this can be found on our website. I'll drop a few links in the chat for you to learn a little bit more about these programs. And that is it for me. I'm now going to turn it over to my colleagues. Thank you very much. These are our social media channels. This is our website, graddiversity.princeton.edu. And my email address is renita.m@princeton.edu. And I hope that if you have questions, if there are opportunities for us to connect with you or your students, that you will not hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Great. Renita, thank you so much. Selena?
Sure, let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Okay. Start the slideshow. I need to go back to the beginning. Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. So first of all, thank you to my colleague, Renita Miller, Dean Renita Miller. And I feel like a bobblehead, like nodding my head, yes, like everything she's saying throughout her presentation. So you'll see some similar information that I'll share with you about our programs here at Columbia University. And I'm specifically in the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. So there is more than one individual school within Columbia University that serves graduate students or offers graduate degree programs, but ours, I think, is the largest PhD granting school within the university. But we also have the business school and the medical school, which offers PhD programs in the biomedical sciences. So I advance through here, and I'm going to go in a little bit in a direction that's opposite from Dean Miller's, and that's that. I'll tell you a little bit about Columbia first and about GSAS, and then I'll end with some specific things that we do with Mcnair programs. So this is Low Library. If any of you have seen photographs of Columbia, or when Columbia appears in movies and television shows, these are the infamous Low Library steps, which in fact is not a library at all. So it houses most of our administrative offices, including the Office of the President, and also the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. Our offices are on the first floor in Low Library. It also houses the Visitor Center. So if you ever just want to stop by our campus and take a tour or get some information about the university, you can stop by Low Library and go to the Visitor Center there. Situating our office, so I oversee the Office of Academic Diversity and Inclusion, which is in the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences here at Columbia. And so a little bit about the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. Again, we have 31 PhD programs that we administer. So there are a total of about 62, it's probably more now, total doctoral programs at Columbia University. They're all conferred through the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, meaning that we administer the process of approving dissertations that are then awarded to degree completers. But in terms of setting the policies for the program requirements themselves, we only do that for 31 of those PhD programs. We also have 47 standalone master's programs. So all of our, or most of our PhD programs, maybe not all of them, but most of them, students enrolled in the PhD programs will earn a master's degree en route to the PhD. But these are, the 47 master's degree programs are standalone masters. So you apply to a program to get the master's degree, and it is a 1 to 2 year program, and then you come out with a master's degree. And then we have 6 dual degree programs, which include the JD PhD, the MD PhD, and a few others. So that's just to give you a sense about that. In terms of how many students we serve, there are about 3,700 students in the graduate school alone. I think in total across Columbia, there are probably something like 10,000 graduate students in different degree programs. But again, in the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, that's 3,700. It's a little bit over half international students, and I'm going to have to consult with Dean Miller about their recent increases in numbers, because that's so impressive. Congratulations. But at last count, our representation of US, what are designated minority students, that's African American and Black, that's Latinx, and that's Native American and Native Alaskan. I think these numbers do not include our Asian American students. So that's about 14.2% of the graduate school. Within our office, or the Office of Academic Diversity and Inclusion, our staffing structure is such. So there's me, I'm Associate Dean of Academic Diversity and Inclusion, where I also oversee our professional development programs for all graduate students. And then there's Afia Wilson, who's our Assistant Director, who is also primarily the first point of contact for students who are inquiring about our programs and about our summer research program, which I'll say a little bit more about in a few minutes. We also have graduate student fellows in academic administration. So these are advanced doctoral students who are trying to get a sense of what it's like to work in higher ed administration. And so they are appointed to different offices within the university, in this case, our office, to support programs, develop projects of their own. So in most cases, the fellows in our office run our research collective, which is an academic year-long research meeting group that is multidisciplinary and also focuses on public scholarship. And so they get a little bit of training, but also community building around those ideas. This year, our graduate student fellows in academic administration are conducting a needs assessment on behalf of the office of students in the various arts and sciences departments, in terms of what are the kinds of things that they wish they had more access to, resources, et cetera, as students from underrepresented groups. And then there's also our OADI student delegation. So each year we bring on about, say 10 to 12 students from across our various departments at both the master's and PhD level who are interested in doing, participating in activities around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So often, you know, when we go on our recruiting trips or when we're welcoming new students to campus, we know that students really value hearing from students, other students who have been in their shoes before. And so we find that we're always asking the same students if they'd be willing to participate in a panel or in some activity where they would interact with prospective or new students. We also wanted to be able to compensate them for that because it is labor. So we decided that the best way to do this would just be to create a delegation where students sign up at the beginning through an application process, and they are with our office for an entire academic year. And they can sign up for the different activities that they want to participate as a delegate, and then we provide them with an annual stipend for doing that. And then we have the Students of Color Alliance. So there are other graduate student affinity groups and organizations on campus, but SOCA is one that works closely with our office. And that's in part because I found that, you know, at many institutions, groups like this can sometimes ebb and flow. So it just depends on who's sort of poised for the transition in leadership once the current cohort of students moves on beyond the institution. And sometimes that can create hiccups in the process. So by having an organization that is tied pretty closely to an administrative office, we can mitigate some of that a little bit. All right, and these are just photos of one of our recent cohorts of OADI student delegates. So as you can see, it's a diverse cohort. And this is a photograph of our Students of Color Alliance. This is also a photograph from some time ago. So most of the students pictured here have already moved on and are postdocs or even professors at other institutions now. And we try to maintain those contacts with our students. All right, so why academic diversity and inclusion? I've italicized academic because you know, you all are familiar with and probably work with your offices of multicultural affairs and offices such as that. And so we want to emphasize how the work that we do is distinctive in that it's not just about celebrating culture and bringing students together, et cetera. There are some very specific objectives that we have in mind with the work that we do. And so the first, which is what we're primarily talking to you about today, is reducing institutional barriers to high quality graduate education at places like Columbia, at places like Princeton, at places like Baylor, and other institutions. So there's a lot that we do around that. We also enhance graduate student experience once they arrive on campus, because typically what we're hearing from our graduate students of color in particular is that they are aware of all of the efforts over, you know, the past several years, decades even, to try to increase the numbers of students from underrepresented groups in our graduate degree programs. But then once they arrive on our campuses, it's as though their unique backgrounds and experiences are not taken into consideration anymore. And so we try to do all that we can to ensure that we're staying in touch with students about what their specific experiences are so that we can address those in ways that are useful for them. So, you know, some of the things might be, you know, on a CV, how do you represent your identity, and do you represent your identity, for example, in a cover letter, in application to a job, for example, once you're completing a PhD program. So that's just one example. And then finally, it's preparing graduate students from all backgrounds in the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because we always say that many of the issues that our students encounter are with faculty, in fact, and often it's because faculty have not been trained or exposed to ideas around supporting students from underrepresented groups and generally just being more inclusive. And so if we are preparing the next cohort of faculty and folks for other industries in the workforce, how do we ensure that they're prepared in these principles as they move on? Reducing barriers. So just a little bit more about what we do with regard to that. So we work very closely with our academic departments to help them understand their data. So what are your applicant pools looking like? What are the trends over the years? Is that getting better? out of the applicants from underrepresented groups who apply to your programs, how many are you actually offering admission to, and how many of those students are actually accepting your offers of admission, and if they're not, why, and what can we do better? We also identify talented students from underrepresented groups to convince them to think about applying to our graduate degree programs as well as our summer research program. And so we do this by attending recruitment events and also hosting students on our campus and organizations on our campus. And then finally, creating varied pathways to and through the PhD. So I am a huge fan of the Pre-Doctoral Fellowships program at Princeton and wish that we could do something similar here, and we're working on it. And if we can get the resources together, we would love to be able to offer something like that as well. So it's really finding a way, again, to just reduce that barrier to entry for students into our graduate degree programs. And finally, specifically working with Mcnair programs. So this is just a list of some of the things that we do. So every year we receive, not just us, so the Council on Graduate Schools releases the list of all students who were participating in Mcnair programs for the past year to our various institutions. And so once we get that list, we have a staff person here who starts to go through it and cleans up that Excel sheet, and then collates all of that data based on field of interest, and then disseminates those lists to our graduate degree programs and encourages them to take a look at the list and include the names on the list in any of their own outreach activities, and to reach out to us with for ideas about how we can support any of those efforts. The second thing is that we participate in regional Mcnair conferences. So I know Dean Miller and her team participate in some of the same ones with us. So there's the New York metro area, New York, New Jersey metro area conference that we try to attend regularly and would love to attend more if you all are interested in inviting us. We also host Mcnair program directors to our campus. So your directors, your staff, and your students to come and speak with us about the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. We also, in these sessions, invite our student delegates to participate on panels and talk about their experience as students here. We might include a tour. It just depends on whatever your group specific needs are. We are happy to work with you to shape something specifically to your needs. We recruit Mcnair students to participate in our summer research program. This is really, we love when we see Mcnair students in the applicant pools for this. We participate through our partnership with the Leadership Alliance, which is a national organization. And so students apply there. And on the application, there's a place to indicate if they are a Mcnair student or other scholarship or research-oriented program, but Mcnair is certainly one of them. And we always look forward to including Mcnair students in our summer research program, which is a 9-week residential program where we match students to a faculty member who is doing research that is aligned with their interest. But then we also have regular programmatic activities that the students participate, including matching them with graduate student mentors or instructors who run a seminar with them based on their broad disciplinary interest each week. We also offer application fee waivers, so they just go in and they click off that they were a Mcnair participant. I think it has to be within the last 3 to 5 years, but they can still request it even if they are outside of that range, and we will consider those requests on a case-by-case basis. But in general, I think I get, I don't know, I'm not sure how many of those requests I get, but I probably approve like 99% of them, and the other 1% that I don't approve typically are eligible on other bases. So whether that's a financial fee waiver or extenuating circumstances or something like that. But Mcnair programs are Mcnair student participants are always automatically granted a fee waiver as long as it's within that 3 to 5 years. And finally, we are very interested in forging new collaborations with your program. So we are, I think, kept busy doing the things that we already do that are already on our plate. And we have all these ideas burning in our heads about what more we could do, and especially in partnership and in collaboration with some of you. But it would be, I think we don't know your programs as well as you do. And so it would really benefit us to have conversations with you about what would be best for you, what would be best for your students. And we are open to having as many of those conversations about as many topics as possible to ensure that we create more and better opportunities for your students to apply to and enroll in our graduate degree programs. So just a photograph here of our summer research program symposium, where you see our faculty and some of the students who are attending, and this is in advance of the students participating, excuse me, in a national symposium with the National Leadership Alliance. And that's it. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And please email gsasdiversity@columbia.edu if you have any questions. I'm also going to drop my personal email address in the chat so that if you want to contact me directly, you can do that. But by emailing GSAS Diversity, you can get me, so I read those emails as long as folks from our team. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dean Chapman Nelson. Now I'll turn it over to Stephen Fernandez.
Thank you so much. Yes, let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right. Let me know, can you see it? Great. All right, well, thank you so much. As Holly mentioned, my name is Steve Fernandez. It's really an honor to be part of this important conversation along with my colleagues here. This is really a discussion that I think is something that we need to, as a Mcnair community, really put a lot of focus in. So I am the Mcnair Scholars Program Director at Baylor University, where I also serve as the Director for Student Opportunity Accessibility Resources. And I also now have the distinct honor of being the president of our Mcnair Association of Professionals, which I'll mention a little bit as we get through the presentation, but definitely an excellent resource that's just been developed for our Mcnair community. So there we go. So I want to just start off with something that's very familiar to us in the Mcnair community, but really put in the lens of this mutually beneficial relationship. So, you know, the idea of participating in scholarly research, graduate school enrollment, retention and graduation, doctoral attainment. It's often something that we look at as Mcnair, as, you know, these are Mcnair goals, but really a lot of it is directly connected to the work the graduate programs are doing. So developing those collaborations are just so important and really benefit all parties involved. So some of the benefits, and I know my colleagues went into more in depth, so I'm going to go really quickly on this, which is those opportunities for collaborations for summer research programs, structured visitation, graduate school recruitment events. So as you know, was mentioned earlier, there's things like this Leadership Alliance, the Big Ten, some of our different preview days, and then virtual meetings. UCF does an amazing job of what they have called as Welcome Wednesdays, where in the fall they'll bring different graduate representatives to come talk to students, talk to scholars, you know, virtually. So it's a great opportunity to just think out of the box of ways to connect and utilize those resources that benefit our scholars. So how to develop those strong relationships. I know that's often something that many of us will struggle with. It's the same advice we give our scholars. You know, you need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to get out there. Don't be shy. Reach out. As you know, we have two different amazing representatives of graduate programs at elite institutions, and they're telling you that you need to be, you know, that they want to hear from you. So definitely taking advantage of those opportunities, talking to them about ways of connecting, identifying those key players in the diversity and inclusion offices, opportunities of working together, exchanging information. And then the big one that is something that you have to continuously monitor is follow-up and responsiveness. You know, you're going to leverage those connections, develop long-term focuses, and really have an idea of not just reaching out to them when, hey, I need to find out about one thing, but how can I continue this relationship going forward so it benefits everyone, not just when I need something for a particular program. And then, don't get intimidated. Yes, there are a lot of programs, a lot of folks to reach out to, but you have to start somewhere. So start small and grow. As I mentioned, are leveraging those existing connections. So if you have a good connection with your university's graduate program, maybe having those connections, help you connect with these different resources, build upon institutional contacts, get to know them. A key aspect is developing authentic relationships and how you can support each other. I think, moving away from just transactional, hey, when are your events, when are this, developing an in-depth relationship. I know, for example, myself, recently I had an issue with a scholar submitting their application for a summer research program. They had submitted it, but they had some technical issues. I was able to contact our contact at that university and really work through the problem, and they were able to submit their application and they received an offer. So it's those kind of relationships that are just key to our scholar success. So just to give you some options on ways to connect, so low-hanging fruits, obviously, as mentioned by my colleagues, conferences. There are a number of Mcnair conferences that happen nationwide. I know we do one here at Baylor. We invite representatives that really do a very good job of supporting our Mcnair scholars. So we're very targeted on those outreaches, but there's a lot of area opportunities to connect as well. There are national conferences. And for our Mcnair regional conferences and national conferences, I encourage folks to visit the McNairScholars.com website, which has some great resources, and I'll talk about in a second as well. But there's also big national diversity and inclusion conferences, like ABRCAM, SACNAS. These are just to name a few. The important thing is to go to places where these representatives are, where are these associate deans attending, where are these recruiters going, and starting at least those initial introductions. Another great resource, if you really want to do it, is cold emails or just reaching out. COE has an excellent resource in the resource tab, which lists all schools that have identified as waiving the application fee. It also lists a lot of great information on if they have Mcnair fellowships, how students, other pertinent information about students applying to those institutions. As I mentioned earlier, McNairScholars.com is a great resource to find about conferences, but you can also find about visitations and different other information on that website. And then lastly, we've recently developed our Mcnair Association of Professionals. This is a national organization represented by Mcnair staff at all levels. We're really encouraging folks to get involved in this. And this is a good way of developing those connections within our Mcnair community, and then having that that community of support to help you connect with some of these amazing graduate programs. So I'll leave you with, because I want to have plenty of time for Q&A, the aspect of it really is a two-way street. It's mutually beneficial. Our goals are supporting our scholars. So we want the success for the students, and so do they. So how can we work together, be proactive, build those relationships over time, seek out opportunities to collaborate. I know my colleagues mentioned some things of, willingness to curate programming. That's so important. I know we reach out to university partners to develop things like personal statement, letters of recommendation, and really having that resource from outside of Mcnair, because students will sometimes engage with that even more in depth. And open communication. I think this was a kind of a theme that I heard through our conversation, which was not only how they can help us with workshops and events, but how we can help them. Having that discussion about opportunities of collaboration, different initiatives, being creative in the way that you think. Workshops and events are just one example. There are a lot of different ways that these collaborations can develop, but they only happen if you start having those conversations. So for example, I think some associate deans, at our recent MPPI, Many of our McNair scholars, McNair directors and staff had mentioned that, sending them a list of McNair scholars applying to university so they can advocate specifically for those scholars. So those opportunities are only available if you start connecting. So it's never too late to start. So if you haven't started developing those networks, start reaching out. There, as you can see from our representatives here, they're more than willing and excited to have those conversations with McNair programs. So I encourage you all to get out there and start developing those networks. So I'm going to open it up for Q&A, and thank you so much for including me as part of this conversation. Holly?
Please, everyone, don't be shy. Feel free to put your questions in the chat. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thanks to all of you. I think we're a small enough group that if you either put your question in the chat or you can raise your hand and I'll start out with a question since nobody's jumping in. Can each of you speak to ways in which you sort of address the challenge of operating in a virtual or hybrid environment and how that has changed your practices? Maybe for the deans, has this meant that you're relying more on virtual presentations, or how has that affected just how you operate in the last while?
I'll get started on this. I would say in some ways, we have went 100% virtual in terms of how we connect, how we even, attend conferences. Usually it's through various platforms. And we use Zoom just as everyone else a lot. From my perspective, however, I think as we begin to sort of move back to in-person, conferences and recruitment and engagements, which we have started to do little by little, I think what the virtual environment has allowed us to do is just really expand the number of students that we can now connect with even more. It has expanded our outreach. It has allowed us to connect with students that we would not have had an opportunity to, because we are so much more accessible. And so what my team and I do is, we do a lot of just open office hours, and we now have a prospective student newsletter, and we also have a prospective newsletter for program directors like those from Mcnair and faculty at other institutions, just to let them know about the virtual opportunities that exist, and also to let them know, like, oh, we will be here at this particular conference. Please share this information with your students. So that's what I would say. It really has allowed us to expand our outreach, and that has been really nice. Of course, you lose that face-to-face, those really personal connections. And so we're looking forward to getting back to that for sure.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would add is that so there are a couple of ways in which, as Dean Miller has noted, we've been able to expand access. And so one is through the Leadership Alliance and the work that we do with them. And then the other is a GSAS specific initiative. But through the Leadership Alliance, there are something like 2,700 to over 3,000 applicants to the programs. And I think we end up only able to place about 10% of those students at a host site. But because of the move to a virtual platform, we also, as an organization, we're able to offer a weekly professional development series over the summer. And so any student at any institution is invited to participate in that, whether you're participating in a Leadership Alliance or other summer research program at all. So that's been excellent. And then the GSAS specifics. So one example of what we've been able to do is to offer admissions application workshops. So where we answer questions online and also kind of walk students through the process, because what we see a lot is there are students who start an application in our system, but for whatever reason abandon the application and do not submit it, do not complete it and submit it. And so we want to make sure that whatever students have about the admissions application process, we're able to answer for them. So like Dean Miller, we look forward to the return to in-person recruitment, because there's, you know, I mean, there's just like the energy around that, being able to take our graduate students with us, being able to talk to a student one-on-one for whom that might be more comfortable, just all of those things, but being able to augment that with our more expanded virtual options and activities has been really a gift in all of this.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, I mean, I agree completely. I think the aspect of, and as was mentioned, really having the opportunity to engage with scholars, you know, in the virtual environment, like asking representatives to do visitation, like these different virtual events, you know, weekly seminars or whatever it is, it really does open up a lot of opportunities that traditionally, if you had to have someone fly in, maybe more limited. So I agree. I think it's definitely not as interactive as in person, but it's definitely a fantastic additional resource, which I hope we continue to utilize.
Great. So there's a question in the chat from Pepper Molar that gets at if sometimes the programs are the last to know that there might be someone, you know, if there's a specific diversity event or visit on their campus, how can they be more proactive in terms of alerting their students to these opportunities? What is the best way, I guess, the single best way to be alerted to your calendars? And, you know, how can they stay in touch that way?
So, so I'm going to drop in the chat the Princeton preview program, but I would say on our website, there's not a collective website that I would say that has information as it relates to many of the schools. Oh, you know what? Actually, there's a Mcnair site. I actually point students to this site often, and it has a list of all of the, not all of them, because Princeton is not on there. I'm hoping to get on this list. But there is a website, I'm going to see if I can find it, for Mcnair's, oh, here it is right here, campus visitation programs. And I would encourage you to use this website to point your students to, because it has a list of all of these programs and it links directly to the campus visitation programs at various institutions. And so I think that's a great resource. And if you go on the diversity site for the many of the graduate programs, whichever ones you're really interested in, they have a lot of their events there. I know that's where we have our recruitment and outreach programs. And we also have a virtual workshop series that we hold in the summer, as well as in the fall, where students can just, you know, come to any of our sessions that discuss graduate admissions. And sometimes we do different topics similar to Dean Chapman Nelson, as it relates to, you know, how to engage with faculty, or how to write a personal statement, or, you know, what to ask your letter of recommenders for, and how you get the best letter for your graduate application. So there are various resources available at different institutions. And as I mentioned, for Princeton, we have our now prospective newsletter, and we are sending this to our, we're going to make sure that you all are on this list and you can receive the information about all of the various things happening at Princeton. And I'm pretty sure other deans have the same information as well. Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, we don't have a regular newsletter that goes out, but that's an excellent idea. So if you don't mind, I might be borrowing from that very brilliant idea. So to connect with you all. Yeah, but I did drop a link in the chat just for our web pages. And so if you click through, I guess the thing to say too is that we welcome other ideas too. So if there are ways in which you think it would be helpful to connect with you to let you know more regularly about these sorts of things, we are happy to consider that and to take some of that on. And also, I think it's just the fast pace at which our work occurs is that I'll have to admit that our communications are not always as we would like them to be. And so we just haven't been able, I think, to get them out in a more structured and formalized regular way as we'd like to, but we're working on that. We're creating various listservs. So I'm sort of thinking out loud right now, and maybe that's an idea that we can entertain, just creating a listserv that you could all subscribe to and get our mailings regularly. So you think about that.
Yeah, I would just add, yes, in reference to listservs, there is a Mcnair general listserv that is often utilized for posting some of these, but I know that emails can sometimes be hard to track. But yes, definitely McNairScholars.com, an amazing resource. In addition, I always encourage programs. I know that's something we do here, which is students may miss emails, but if you can centralize some of that information in, you know, a Canvas page or whatever you can utilize within your university to have those and regularly update those. It's something that we do, and it helps students really have somewhere centralized where they can go and say, these were all the summer research programs that have reached out. This is all the visitations that we've been, we've received emails about. So try to make it as accessible as possible for our scholars.
Great. Other questions? There are not so many resources represented by these three people here right now. In any case, as I said at the beginning, we are recording this. We know there's some people who wanted to be part of this, but who couldn't due to conflict schedules today. So everyone who registered will be sending out the recordings for you. But if there are no other questions, anybody raising their hand? I just want to thank the deans, Dean Miller, Dean Chapman Nelson, and Stephen Fernandez for joining us today, and for all of you. And just as a reminder, part 2 of this series will take place next Monday, March 7th. I'm going to drop that event link in the chat. And if you have not already registered, or if you know someone who would like to know about that, doesn't seem to be working, my cutting and pasting. Let me try that one more time. Okay, there's the link to the register for the part 2 of our series. But anyway, thank you all, Renita, Selena, and Stephen. This has been incredibly informative, and I hope it really does encourage people to step out of their comfort zone and broaden their connections. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.